I'm Katja.
And I'm Rin.
And we're here at Commonwealth Holistic Herbalism in Boston, Massachusetts.
And on the internet everywhere, thanks to the power of the podcast.
Woo!
Woo-hoo.
So, at the beginning of last week, I said to Rin, oh my God, it is that time of year when we get a million emails with people asking about herbal detox protocols.
Is it earlier than usual this year? Are people hoping for spring?
We just want spring.
It's like, come on, let's do it. Let's get that spring cleanse. You know?
Yeah, well, because it's there's some of the New Year's resolution kind of oh, the diet didn't work, so maybe I should do a detox.
Yeah.
And then some of the spring cleaning, and they kind of blend together. Anyway, so I said to Rin, could you make me a couple of social media posts to tell people that they don't need a cleanse, and instead to sort of give some information about healthier ways to take care of your body when you are thinking that a detox is necessary? When the word detox pops into your head, that there are healthier ways to solve those problems. And so can you just make me a couple of social media posts about that? And he did, y'all.
I did it.
And wow, the internet loved them. Went bananas. So in case you didn't see them, or if you did but you just want more information about why you don't need to do a cleanse to keep your body healthy, here we are. We are talking about not herbal detoxing.
Yeah. Or simultaneously, another way to think about detox entirely. As opposed to this thing that happens in these intense moments of a strong intervention to make stuff happen with force. Instead to be something that is an ongoing process, and that we can support it in lots of different ways, and that we should, in fact, if we want this to work out well. And
they don't have to be harsh, they can be gentle.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our topic today, and don't worry, the Don't-Tox is coming, so we'll explain all of that to you. But just right up front, I want to remind everybody that we're not merely podcasters. We run a whole darned herb school right here on the internet. And this podcast is in many ways, it's a path, it's a route for us to give you a taste of what our teaching style is like and what our philosophy is like. And that can help you decide if our school is right for you. Not every herbalist will agree with all the things we have to say about detox today.
That's true. Some people love a good, harsh cleanse, and they just love it.
Yeah. So listen, if you like our podcast, you'll love our Herbalism courses.
And we're going to be talking about detox today, and we do have an online course specifically about your body's natural detoxification processes and how to support those gently and lovingly and everydayly, so that you don't need to do a harsh cleanse. So yes, we have a course for that. But I also really want to recommend the Community Herbalist program. That is a whole bundle, and it contains all of the courses about all of the parts of your body, how your body works, how does your cardiovascular system work, how does your digestive system work, and then how does it break down, and then how do we put it all back together. And the reason that I really want to link that in with these concepts of detox is because it's not just about setting the record straight on detox or cleanse, whether you do or don't need a cleanse. It's really about learning how and knowing how to rebuild your body from all the stress and nonsense that you have lived through in your life up until now, right? Your whole life till now. Your liver and all the other organs of elimination are an excellent place to start, and we cover that in the detox course. But in the whole Community Herbalist program, you are going to get all of the organs, your heart, your lungs, your immune system, all of your guts, and your nervous and emotional system, and your whole body. And all of that is really critically important in terms of the things that start to break down and make us feel stagnant and sluggish and gross and make us feel I need a cleanse. Because those feelings aren't wrong. Those feelings aren't fake. You're not imagining those feelings. You are having those feelings, but we're talking here about strategies that feel better in your body about how to address them. So, yes, Yes, we will come back to that detox course later. But this really is the best time to sort of like go for the gold health-wise and learn how to take care of all the parts of your body for yourself, for your friends and their bodies, for your family, for your whole community. The Community Herbalist Program.
That's why it's called that. That's right. All right, so before we leap in further to the topic, we're going to just do our reclaimer to get ourselves started here. That's where we remind you that we are not doctors, we are herbalists and holistic health educators.
The ideas discussed in this podcast do not constitute medical advice. No state or federal authority licenses herbalists in the United States, so these discussions are for educational purposes only.
We want to remind you that good health doesn't mean the same thing for everyone. Good health doesn't exist as an objective standard. It's influenced by your individual needs, experiences, and goals. So please keep in mind, we're not attempting to present some single dogmatic right way that you must adhere to.
Everyone's body is different, so the things that we're talking about may or may not apply directly to you, but we hope that they'll give you some new information to think about and some ideas to research and experiment with further.
Finding your way to better health is both your right and your own personal responsibility. This doesn't mean you're alone on the journey, and it doesn't mean that you're to blame for your current state of health, but it does mean that the final decision when you're considering any course of action, whether it's discussed on the internet or prescribed by a physician, that's always your choice to make. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So why do we keep saying this? You don't need a cleanse. You don't need a purge. You don't need a liver flush or a gallbladder flush, for that matter. Why would we say such a thing?
Well, I think that there's a million reasons, right? First off, some of those things are hoaxes, actually. This whole flush thing. When they and then supposedly the little gallstones or whatever come out of you. You guys, that's not gallstones, that's soap. Because all of those have an acid and an oil put together. Usually it's some lemon juice something and then a bunch of olive oil or something. And when you put those together in your guts, they turn into soap and you get little balls of saponified olive oil, and that's what's coming out of you. So one thing is that, some of these things aren't even real, right? Some of them are, but they're just really harsh on the body, and you're maybe already kind of depleted and maybe already kind of stressed and sleep debt and whatever else. And what, now we're going to do a 3-day fast? Actually you need more energy, not fasting.
Yeah.
So
there's a better way, actually, to solve these kind of problems. Problems of, I feel fatigued all the time, I have brain fog, my joints ache in a way that seems kind of deep-seated, all the different things that lead people to say, I gotta cleanse, I gotta clean myself up, I gotta purify the temple of my body, There's a better way, actually, to solve these things. So instead of this, emergency Drano solution of a cleanse, which is really addressing at the end of the line, the problem's already developed and we're way down here at the bottom of your guts doing some work,
Let's just try to poop it out.
Yeah, right. That's the approach that's taken there, but what if we start at the beginning? What if we start with digestive health? Mm-hmm. What if we strengthen the organs of elimination, and not just one or two, the liver and bowels, but all of them, kidneys and lungs and skin. Mm. We have all of these different organs and systems in the body dedicated to detox or metabolic cleanup, or different words we could use for the same set of processes. And if we give them what they need on a regular basis, then we don't need a kind of sharp, heavy, strong intervention in the form of a detox protocol. Mm. Yeah.
I feel that it's starting at the end of the line is really where it's at, because all of those ideas about about a cleanse, it's really focused on what you're going to get out of you, your intestines are somehow gross or dirty. And one reason that it might feel that way is that maybe you feel super bloated, maybe you feel really constipated, or just super sluggish, or your digestion isn't going anywhere and everything is sitting inside you like a brick. But you don't need Roto-Rooter to fix that. We need to look at, what are you eating? So start at the very tippy top of the digestive tract, which is your mouth,
Yeah.
and think about what's going in there and also what's not going in there. So, like, are we making sure that you're getting enough fiber in your diet? Like, even just that one thing. And it doesn't need to be like harsh Metamucil, like stir this gritty stuff up and drink it down so that you get the laxative effect kind of fiber. Like raspberries, avocados, like blueberries.
Yeah. So, sometimes the approach or the, I don't know, like the theoretical underpinnings of these detox approaches is very mechanistic in nature. And this is why we like to kind of break through that sometimes by saying things like, hi, you're not a dishwasher, right? Like, your liver isn't the food trap that gets all the bits of material and the gunk and the slime that congeals inside of it, right? That's not what your liver is. That thing in the dishwasher needs a good hard scrub every now and then, and maybe we soak it in bleach for a while just to really get it done, right? But you don't need that, because you're not a machine, you're a mammal. And you have all these different organs that do this kind of job, right? You've got the liver, you've got the kidneys, you've got the lungs and the skin and the bowels, and you're self-cleaning in this way, right? If we provide the body what it needs, like fiber, like minerals and nutrients and B vitamins and all the things that feed and support and maintain these processes in the system. Yeah.
As we're thinking about all the different organs that are going to help us with this, I would like to also add the microbiome in as an organ.
Right.
Because your bacteria in your guts, they're not all bacteria. There's like all different kinds of things in there. Some of them are beneficial yeasts. A lot of times we hear like, oh, the candida, that's bad. But yes, candida is one kind of yeast, but there are all kinds of beneficial yeasts as well. So I don't want us to think that it's like only just bacteria in there, in the microbiome. But the thing is that the way that the kind of modern standard diet doesn't really promote microbiome health. And that also contributes to those feelings of bloated and stalled out digestion and all that other stuff. So I just want to make a plug for adding the microbiome into our organs of elimination as well.
Yeah, it's pretty important, and sometimes that's referred to as the silent organ.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should listen to the sound of the silent organ. Okay.
I'm just like, in the old timey Dracula movie or whatever, and then there's the organ like but now it's a silent movie, and so it's the silent organ, and it's like the big. Okay, anyway, never mind. It's really funny inside my head.
Yeah, and there's a giant bacteria that's playing it. So look, if you don't need a cleanse, what should you do instead?
Yeah, we're actually going to tell you. We are going to give you those answers.
We have some thoughts for you. And we'll give you like direct ideas here, but we also have a poem for you.
We do not have a poem for you. Rin wrote a poem for you. And really, all I did, I was like, babe, can you just put together like something so that we can get this out there and help people understand? And like, I come back and he's like dramatically reciting a poem that he wrote about it for you. And I just want you to know how lucky you are.
Yeah, so this one, it kind of goes with a little picture. It should be in your podcast feed in the show notes or whatever. But so this is called the Don't Ox, and it goes like this. If you think you need a detox, hear and heed the Don't Ox. Listen well when he talks, when he says, don't. Don't you doubt your liver and the action it delivers in concert with your kidneys to clean your blood. If you feed your body rightly, if you sleep you well a nightly, if you walk when sun shines brightly, you'll keep inner waters clear. You don't need to haunt the potty. You just need to trust your body. Give it nicely, more than naughty, without force and without fear. If you taste a bit of bitter, eat some greens at every dinner, then you'll run that inner river in a flow, but not a flood. Now every day is a detox, and our good old friend, the Don't Ox, is sure when we hear purge talk, we'll remember don't. All right.
So I think that is like such a lovely way to remember all the advice that we're about to give you in a much more boring format. But feel free to memorize that poem. Go right ahead. It's fine.
Yeah.
You can recite it to anyone basically that you want, because there's so much in there. But let's break it down in more narrative terms. So the first thing that the Detox suggested was to eat well. Yeah.
Right. When people are feeling sluggish, sometimes, and especially if they've been influenced by these ideas around detox and cleansing and fasting, sometimes their response is, I'm going to eat less. I'm going to eat nothing for a few days. I'm going to drink the fancy lemonade. I'm going to, I'm just going to power through it with a dry fast even. And this is going to empty me out, and then I'll be clean. And you can see the appeal of an approach like that. But we find at least as successful, and in fact more successful for more people, is to eat well instead of eat less, right? And so if we do things like try to eat 6 servings of vegetables today, try to hit some targets for fiber intake, try to put a ceiling on sugar intake, right? And, kind of a low ceiling for hobbits or something like that. Then those kinds of things can have a really powerful effect on your mood, on your mentation, on the way you move through the world. Yeah.
Now, there's nothing wrong with, intermittent fasting or different strategies. Some people like, just skip one meal on Wednesdays, or I eat in a window of, I eat my meals between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. and I don't eat before 8 a.m. and I don't eat after 6 p.m. Different strategies like that are actually really helpful. So there's like the total fast, I'm going to eat nothing for 3 days. That's one extreme.
Right.
And then the other extreme is kind of the way that most Americans eat today, which is I'm just basically going to graze all day long.
Breakfast and a little snack, and then some lunch, and then a little snack, and then some dinner, and then a big snack.
Yeah, right? Right? And so you're basically eating like, maybe not first thing in the morning, because most people don't feel good about doing that, but definitely all the way until bedtime. That's a very common pattern in our culture. And so that's where this concept of intermittent fasting really kind of came up, and it's been, the concept of intermittent fasting has been stretched in many different directions to mean many different things, but basically, it just sort of means don't eat all of the time. And so the most basic way of doing that is don't eat between meals. And we're not trying to calorie restrict there. We're just saying give your digestive system some time to digest your breakfast before you eat your lunch. Don't put like another task in between that your digestive system is going to have to do. And then the same for dinner, like between lunch and dinner, don't stick another item to do in the middle there or multiple of them. Just eat your lunch, eat a nice, sustaining lunch and a good dinner. And then the same thing before bed. Don't be snacking right up until bed. Try not to eat anything for like 3 hours before you go to bed. And the reason for those gaps is that your body has work to do. After you eat food, there's a whole process of work that has to happen before your body's actually ready to accept any more food. But our sort of current cultural habits around food don't really give us the time to do that whole to-do list. And then what we end up with is like our digestive system, think of it as like a factory or something. That factory never gets to complete its job. It's just always going. So that's problematic. So even if you were like, forget it, Rin, I'm never eating another vegetable as long as I live. It's not going to happen. I know you just said eat more vegetables. I'm not doing it. Okay, that wouldn't be great. Eat some vegetables. But even if all you did was just stop snacking in between meals and try to stop eating right before bedtime, even just that would already start to make a difference.
Yeah. Now, these things, eat more vegetables, get more fiber, have less sugar, They are also very general diet advice, right? Oh, you want to be healthy, then do these things. But to see them from the perspective of detox is to say, well, when I eat more vegetables, I both provide my body with some key nutrients that are required for my liver to function well, for my kidneys to function optimally, for all of these innate systems to work the way they're supposed to work. And it also involves, like, let's put less of a stress on the body, right? And one key insight that is really central to our understanding of detoxification in a more realistic way is that a lot of what your body treats as toxins or waste materials to be cleaned up and eliminated, they originate from inside the system. The call is coming from inside the house, okay? When we eat sugar, especially large amounts of it, especially repeatedly through the entire course of the day, that has consequences for us that requires hormones to be released in order to cope with that influx of sugar to the blood, to try to normalize things as best as the body can manage. And then those hormones then need to be cleaned out of the system. That puts a load on your liver. That goes alongside the load from stress response that you've got to any stressor you experience, and I'm sure you have a long list, right? That goes alongside stress upon the body that comes from short sleep or insufficient amounts or quality of sleep. That goes along with exposures that you may have from your job or from the environment that you live in, right? So all of those things come in there together. They all go into your stressor bucket. They're all part of what you have to process and clean out over the course of the day. Some of them are in your control, especially the ones around food. Mm-hmm. So this is why we like to focus there first.
Right. And then I do also want to just tack on here at the end. We said vegetables and fiber and less sugar. Don't forget protein. You need lots of protein. You probably need more protein than you think. So like I'm not leaving that out, or good healthy fats too, not leaving that out either. Those are both also really important elements to the detoxification process. And even before we get to the organs of elimination, like if you're not getting enough protein, you're not making enough stomach acid, which means you're not breaking down your food in the stomach to the extent that it's supposed to be, and then it's getting to your intestines in a state that is too raw for your intestines to be able to work with. And so that also is gumming up the works. So like protein and fats weren't like a major focus of that segment, but I just want to acknowledge that they are present, that they are important, and we just don't want this podcast to be 5 hours long.
Yeah, true. The other thing about this is that we're not saying this is like an intervention for 2 days, right?
Right.
Like, oh yeah, eat veggies for 2 days and that will cleanse you out and you'll be all set. Because that's the other major issue, or another major issue with the way that these processes are often, presented. It's, you're feeling bad, you need to cleanse, you're going to do this for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and then you're going to be all better. And the thing that's lacking there is, are you going to go back to the same habits that got you into this position to start with, right? And so when we talk about eating more vegetables and increasing fiber intake and protein and good fats and less sugar and all of that, we're talking about long-term changes. So they might start as small changes, right? Mm-hmm. You adjust this aspect of your diet, you get used to it for a while, now it becomes automatic habit. And then we adjust this other part of your diet and we work with that for a while. It takes attention, it takes intention, it takes activity every day until it becomes habit. And now it's self-sustaining, right? And so this is the way that we kind of spiral around with the work we do, or we like gradually accumulate these shifts. Yeah. And that goes as well for sleep changes, right? A lot of people...
That was the next thing the Doc said, sleep well.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we're talking to clients and they start to describe their sleep habits, we're like, wow, you're getting 5 hours of sleep a night, or maybe less, and we would really love to see that be 9 hours of time in bed every night. But if they can increase by half an hour, that makes a big difference. If they can increase by 1 hour a night, that makes a huge difference, right? So we don't have to do all of it immediately and all at once. We can make gradual changes, we can get used to the new habit, can allow it time to settle in. But sleep is super critical here, because your body does so much of that self-cleaning work while you're sleeping.
This is like, I don't know, I've been on this real kick lately of analogies with household appliances. So here comes a household appliance analogy. Are you ready? In your oven, there is like a clean cycle, like a self-cleaning cycle for your oven, where it like gets really hot and it burns off the whatever, and then you open it back up again at the end once it's cooled down, and you like dust out a little bit of stuff. And I don't know. I don't usually use the self-cleaning cycle, but usually I just wipe it down with some vinegar.
Get in there and scrub it.
Yeah, I just get in there and scrub it. But you probably know about the self-cleaning cycle in your oven, whether you've used it recently or not. And you turn on the self-cleaning cycle and it locks the oven. And you cannot open the oven door until that self-cleaning cycle is done. And the reason is for safety, right? Because it uses a much higher temperature than you would normally bake at. And so it won't let you open the door until the whole process is complete and the oven has cooled down enough so that it's like not a hazard. So, and that's like a whole thing. You start that thing and it's like, forget it. You are not going to open the oven. All right. Think about your body the same way. You have a certain to-do list of all of the cleaning functions that have to happen in your body. And the majority of that stuff happens while you're asleep. The problem is there's not like a lock function on your sleep, so you can open the oven door while the self-cleaning cycle is going, and that's like not good. But
in this way, you are not an oven.
You are not an oven. You're not actually an oven. It would maybe be good if we were, because then we would not be skimping on sleep so much. But think of sleep exactly the same way as you think of that self-cleaning cycle, and there's a lock on it. And there's a lock on it because it takes a certain amount of time, and it cannot be done any faster than that. It cannot safely be done any faster than that. And the same thing is actually true in your body. That to-do list takes how long it takes. It cannot be done any faster. By the way, if you're dealing with a lot of stress or chronic illness or something like that, it will take longer. It won't ever take less time, but it will take longer if you have like extra parameters, right? So you might need more than 8.5 or 9 hours of sleep. You might need 10 hours of sleep. There's not actually anything wrong with that. If that's how long your body needs to do the total reset cycle so that you can start the next day ready to go, then that's how long your body needs. Just pretend there is a lock on the door of your sleep and that you can't wake up until that's finished.
Okay. So sleep is important, and movement is important as well. And, the more you sleep, the more energy you've got to move around, and the more willing you are to, play in the sun and run in the fields and all that, right? So we have to move the body around in order for these systems of internal cleansing to work well, because they depend on fluid movement. The movement of your blood, the movement of your lymph, the movement of extracellular fluid from areas around tissue into those streams that are flowing. We need that to happen. And most of that movement won't occur if we're just sitting in place. Because most of the movement of the blood and the lymph and the fluids of the body is dependent on the movement of your skeletal muscles, the ones that you control, right? So your heart isn't tasked with the job of pumping blood all the way through your miles of blood vessels out to the tips of your fingers. Right?
You probably thought it was, right? Because that's what we learn in like elementary school biology class or whatever. Oh, the heart pumps the blood. It does.
Yeah.
But it doesn't pump it all the way to the everywhere.
Right.
It pumps it through like the trunk. And then there are, in your arteries, there are some muscles that help it keep going. In your veins, there are not. And it's your skeletal muscles that do the work of moving it back towards your heart. And your skeletal muscles also assist the tiny muscles inside of the arteries, moving it out to the periphery as well.
Yeah. So that means that when we want these things to move around well, when we want to keep the blood flowing to the liver and the kidneys so that they can function as more than a filter, because they're not just like a passive filter system, but they're active and engaged in everything, they need help to get the blood to them so that they can work on it and they can send it back out into circulation and have it be the way you want. So taking a walk, doing some stretching, doing some bed yoga, whatever is accessible for where you're at right now is critically important for these things to function well. And for the person who loves to do a gallbladder flush or whatever, if they do that but they sit still the whole day, whatever benefits that's supposed to have, they're missing out on many of them, right? The movement itself is at least as important as that ingestion of those things that are going to go and act on these organs or force something to happen. Yeah, so movement is critical here.
It's kind of like, you know, a lot of people feel like they need to do a cleanse when they feel mentally sluggish, physically sluggish, but then also, like, physically sluggish is one thing, but then, like, it creeps into mentally sluggish, and then you're just like, oh, I really need to do something about this.
Yeah.
And think about that as directly related to movement. Because if you're sitting wherever you're sitting right now, I hope for you that you're taking a beautiful walk in a beautiful location, but maybe you're not able to, like maybe you're driving or something like that. But if you're sitting somewhere and your legs are crossed, oh, my legs are crossed right now, and you know, your leg falls asleep, it feels a certain way. It's heavy, it's numb, it's uncomfortable, and it's like kind of dumb.
And then maybe if you poke at it, it kind of tingles and it's maybe a little irritated?
Yeah. Either irritated or like it's dumb, right? You try to walk, but your foot and the ankle, like it mechanically doesn't all work right, and then you feel like you're gonna trip or whatever. Okay, now, that happens because there's no circulation. Blood is not moving, lymph is not moving, nothing's moving in there because it was bent and you literally had like closed it off from the system, right? So now if you think about your day, and you might be very sedentary in your day, and that might be because of your job or whatever else, it just is what it is. But that's like your leg falling asleep, because there's no movement, there's no circulation happening. And then you feel like kind of dumb in your head because you're just like, I don't know, everything's foggy and like I just can't think straight and whatever. And your body kind of doesn't work exactly right, like mechanically, the processes are just not happening quite right. And all of it is kind of like your legs asleep, except it's like your whole body and also your brain is asleep. And so, yeah, like moving is what's going to get that circulation happening again. And nothing is going to be filtered out. Nothing is going to be refreshed and cleaned if it's not moving anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So I want to pause here for a moment and just say that we've been talking about food, about sleep, about movement, and this doesn't mean that we're wandered off the path of herbalism, right? Like the path that we're on with these pillars of good health has herbs growing on both sides of it. Okay.
Aww.
So yeah.
Aww, that was so adorable.
So when it comes to eating well and digesting well and processing food efficiently, well, there's a lot of herbs that can help out with that, right? Like you probably have your favorite carminatives and your favorite herbs to relieve digestive spasm and cramping, and herbs to accelerate the processing of food or deepen it so that you really get all you can from your food. We're going to talk about bitters in a moment because they're a really special case for this purpose, right? But any digestive herb makes sense here, and it can be very helpful in parallel to that work you do with food choices. Right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to sleep, well, yeah, we've got herbs to relax your mind and calm anxiety, and then we've got hypnotic herbs to knock you out when you really need that, right? So we have ways to help there. When it comes to movement, this could be herbs to help reduce pain, right? Your knee hurts a lot, but if you rub your liniment on it, then you can go and walk for 20 minutes. Fantastic, right? So addressing pain can be a big part of it, or herbs to encourage more blood movement, more lymphatic flow, right? Yeah. You drink some calendula and Damiana tea as you take your walk, right? So the physical intervention and the herbal intervention, they serve each other, right? And so from this perspective, you can say those digestive herbs, those sleep herbs, and those herbs that help with movement, if you want to, go ahead and call them detox herbs today. That's fine, right? Like if that's the way you need to see them or the way you need to talk about them to somebody who's super interested in detox but doesn't really want to talk about their digestive comfort, this is a way to frame it so that they see the connection and that they get the motivation from that. Yeah. All right.
All right, well, like you said, bitters.
Yeah, bitters.
So bitters were a specific topic for the Don't Ox. Taking bitters before your meals. And I think, I don't know, there's so many, this was probably the first thing you learned in herbalism, but perhaps bitters were the first thing you learned in herbalism. And it really can be any bitter. If you've got blessed thistle, great. If you've got artichoke leaf, great. If you've got calamus, fantastic. If you've got centauri, also good. Like whatever bitter it is. And it's even fine if it's like, oh, well, I have a bunch of blue vervain because it helps me deal with stress. Yeah, and it's also bitter. Go ahead, work with that. Any of the bitter herbs are going to serve this purpose, and that purpose is to help stimulate digestion and get the whole system ready for the food that's going to come in, right? So it's not just that you eat the food and then like digestion happens, right? There's like so many steps, and again, it really is like a factory. There's the step where the saliva gets squirted on it to make it easier to chew. That's like literally a chewing lubricant. And it also already has some enzymes and some other good stuff in there that help to begin the breakdown process. And then it's also a really good lubricant for swallowing. So now you're swallowing and it's into your stomach and you've got more juices who are going to get sprayed on it or like it's going to, plop down in these juices. And they are going to facilitate further breakdown of the food. And then some stuff is going to happen in the stomach to help that. And it's going to stay in there for a certain amount of time so that it can break down a certain amount before it moves on. Like a certain amount of work has to get done to it before it can move on to the small intestine. And then a certain amount of new work is going to happen before it can move on to the large intestine. And all of these different things all have their associated fluids and all of the different tasks that need to happen in each location. And so when you take bitters before a meal, I don't know if you've ever been in a factory, but there is there are conveyor belts and there are mechanical processes that happen, and then there are people in the factory as well who are interacting with those mechanical processes. Sometimes the conveyor belts get stopped as part of the function. And when they turn back on, there is usually flashing lights and some kind of a loud sound. Not just the sound of the machine, but also like some kind of a horn type of sound. To notify everyone, hey, the belts are about to start running. Hey, the processes are about to start happening. Hey, this is a safety issue, get out of the way, right? And so you could think of bitters like that. Well, not just that it's a safety issue, get out of the way, but also like get to your station. The stuff is about to be coming to you, right? Yeah. And so that's what bitters are. They're like the flashing light and the horn right before the conveyor belt gets started, telling everybody, hey, get to where you're supposed to be so that this process is going to happen safely and efficiently. That's the job of bitters.
So like you said, any bitter is going to help with that. But you do want to taste it, right? So I wouldn't advise just being like, well, I'm going to buy a capsule of artichoke leaf powder and swallow that. You get some of the benefit from it. Yes, I admit, there are bitter taste receptors through the whole GI tract and a bunch of other weird places in your body as well. But the best way to work with bitters is to taste them, right? So take a squirt of tincture right on the tongue, chew on some calamus root or a knob of turmeric, I guess. Anything like that where you taste it. That's the best way to have the complete expression of that process from the mouth all the way through to the end. Yeah. Bitters are also famous for their direct action on the liver, right? The effect of stimulating stomach acid and pancreatic fluid secretion and so on is often like an afterthought, but it's at least as important as getting the bile flowing, getting the liver secreting, getting the gallbladder squirting that stuff out, right? All of these things work together. They work together. Yeah. And you can see that they address several elements of your detoxification process simultaneously, right? It's about giving you something that's more ready to be absorbed and utilized as a fuel source or a building block or whatever else, like the nutrient absorption aspect of it. And then it's also the eliminative aspect of it, right? Some wastes are going out in the bile, those are going to be eliminated, we're getting rid of stuff. So it's getting both sides of the process at the same time, which is really efficient. Yeah.
You know, since we're talking about the liver, this is going to be a good place to kind of toss the kidneys some little appreciation, because the next piece of advice here that we got from the poem was have some greens. And so kind of like as we segue towards the greens, I want to do that via the kidneys. Because we think a lot about the liver when we're thinking about digestion and the detox process, but your kidneys also are like a really huge part of detoxification. And your kidneys are not so, they don't dislike bitter, but like bitter, just the bitter flavor isn't going to do it for them like it does for the liver. You need like some other kinds of support for your kidneys. And funny, but most of the leafy greens fall into that category. Now, when we think herbally about supporting the kidneys, we're really often thinking about things like nettle and red clover and dandelion leaf and goldenrod. These are like really standout kidney support. And they make a great tea. That's fantastic. You can make them into a tea, drink them a lot.
Plus some of them, and particularly from the ones you mentioned, the dandelion leaf and the goldenrod, they're both encouraging kidney activity and have a bitter element to them that's hitting the liver, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting both at the same time there.
Yeah. It's mild bitter. It's not as bitter as some of the like really bitter bitters, but still it is there, and it really is going to be doing that work. Now, if you make a blend like this, that was nettle, red clover, dandelion leaf, and goldenrod, it's going to be drying overall in the body, right? Because it is encouraging the flow of fluids towards the kidneys so that you can remove it from your body. Ultimately, that will be drying. Now, that might be fantastic, especially if you're like a little bit puffy and you carry a little bit of extra fluid around with you. That definitely is my body type. And so I could drink that tea for a pretty long time before it would be uncomfortable. Yeah. That's not true for Rin.
Right. I don't have excess fluid. I have deficient fluid as well.
you don't even have enough fluid. Yeah.
So if I was going to drink this, I would need to, say, construct it so that I have maybe one part of each of those drying herbs, and then like 4 parts of marshmallow or linden or some other moistening agent into the mixture to balance that out and make sure that my formula was at least hovering around neutral rather than being drying, you know.
And you know, marshmallow is a great choice there because marshmallow root itself has quite a lot of affinity for the kidneys, does a lot of work throughout the whole urinary system. So that would be a beautiful addition to this formula. And then I'll just make a little note here. If you are taking blood thinners, these herbs would be contraindicated. So we want to just double check there for safety. And that would depend on which type of blood thinner you're taking. So there are like a few different checks that we would want to do, but I do just want to note that for blood thinners that this formula would need to be checked. Yeah.
There's a lot of nuance to that, and especially for those of you who are like advancing in your training, just keep in mind that these kind of contraindications aren't a blanket no forever in all cases. We must proceed with caution. We must make assessments or observations or blood tests of certain factors in order to be sure that we're on a safe path, right? Okay. For those of you who are brand new, just don't combine these things.
That's the safest way. Yeah.
That's right. So, you know, the Don't Talks suggest to have some greens with every dinner. And again, fiber is so important that we had to say it twice. But why? Like, okay, I heard about fiber from my grandmother and she called it roughage. And she was like, it'll keep you clean in there. You know, like, okay, great. But what is the connection to detox? Is it only that it helps you to poop? Well, that would be enough.
I mean actually, yeah.
There's a ton of problems that come when people get constipated, including like reabsorption of stuff you tried to excrete the first time around. There are some things that can get reabsorbed if they sit in the intestine for too long and cause you more problems, or be like, hey, I already dealt with this once, like why is this coming back at me again?
Right.
So
right.
yeah, actually, having a nice bowel movement is a powerful method of detox. But but you know that we're not over here trying to give people diarrhea until they're totally empty.
Right.
Like, that's not the approach that we're looking for either. So fiber is a nice balance because it does have that capacity to ease the passage, but it's not a forceful laxative. It's not a stimulant laxative like Senna, or like Cascara Sagrada, or like enormous doses of coffee, or coffee enemas for that matter. You know,
yeah, oh no.
Yeah.
And this is another place where we can talk about machinery. And like, listen, your body's not a machine, but we don't always have like a clear picture of what's going on inside our bodies. And most of us do have pretty decent understandings of certain common machines, because we've seen the inside of machines and we have not really seen the insides of our body. We're not really sure exactly how that works. So it does make a good example a lot of the time. And here's the example. Fiber is part of the required input for your body to function. So if you think again about the digestive system as like a factory or whatever, and you just imagine yourself in this factory or the different machines in the factory, sometimes you got to squirt oil on something. Otherwise, it will seize up and it'll stop running. And so, okay, in that case, that's a lubricant, and we already associated that with bile and saliva and other kinds of juices that escape. But there are other inputs that have to happen in order for the machines to work properly. And those inputs were part of the design. You can't just stop doing them. You can't just stop putting gas in your car, but you also, if you have a gas-powered engine, you also can't just stop replacing the oil filter or stop replacing the air thing that goes around the carburetor. Like, there are certain filters and hoses and like belts, timing belts and whatever, that have to be replaced at certain points. And if you don't do it, your car will stop working. So like the replacement of those items is part of the design of the machine. The machine does not function if you do not replace those things at the appropriate time. And we don't think about fiber in the same way. We think, oh, I don't feel like any cabbage today. That's not appealing to me. I don't feel like eating kale today. That's not appealing to me. But we don't realize that fibrous vegetables, and I'm not talking about like psyllium husk here. I'm talking about vegetables because that's what the machine was designed to have as input. That these fibrous vegetables provide a material that is required for poop to function normally. Your poop doesn't function right if you don't get enough fiber. Just like your car doesn't function right if the oil filter is old and clogged up and hasn't been replaced. So if you start thinking about fiber, and then you can say, well, why? Why is fiber so important? Well, because of course we are not machines. We were not like designed as a blueprint and then built or whatever, like we grew and changed and evolved over time and adapted. And one of the things is that throughout all of history until very, very recently, every food that we could get our hands on was really fibery. So fiber was always available, which meant that the human body was able to depend on it as a mechanism for making poop come out. And other things maybe were not available, and therefore we had to come up with a way to make our own bile because we weren't eating bile, so we had to make that one ourselves. But enough fiber came in the diet that we did not make a method of getting the poop packaged out to come out of us because we knew we could use the fiber as that method.
Right. Like vitamin C, right?
Yes.
We are unable to create our own vitamin C within our body, but relatively close relatives relatively close relatives, sure, of ours can do that, right? So your cat, if fed an appropriate diet for a cat, can make her own vitamin C inside of her body. And that means that she doesn't need to eat lemons or berries or other food sources that contain vitamin C, right? But we do. We need that input. And we accept very readily that you can get sick if you don't have enough vitamin C in your diet. We call it scurvy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we know what that looks like and the results of that. When people are getting minimal or insufficient amounts of fiber, we don't really have like a disease state name for that in conventional medicine, or the way most people understand health. But it does cause a breakdown. It does cause a lack of efficient function in an analogous way to what would occur if your intake of vitamin C was too low or completely absent.
Yeah.
Right? And this can manifest in different ways, right? Like, so it seems to have maybe peaked and is starting to come down, but there was a huge interest in the carnivore diet in the past bunch of years. And there were, like other diets, like a vegan diet, there were very different ways people were doing it, right? And some of them, it was just basically ground meat all the time, and not very complex, not getting organ meats, not getting connective tissues.
No gristle.
Right.
Yeah.
And it turns out that if you're going to try and eat a carnivore type diet, those things are essential in part because they act as animal-based fibers, right? Mm-hmm. And the people who are missing out on that, they were getting a lot of discomfort in the bowel and a lot of unpleasant bathroom situations and all of that going on, right? Because they were lacking in some essential stuff. So there's various ways to get it, and the Inuit had this all locked down between seaweed consumption and eating the entire animals, right?
Right, wasting not any part.
Right. But it's easy for people in the modern world to hear about a particular diet approach and to think it means something that it really doesn't. And that's usually a matter of lacking critical elements that would be part of an ancestral diet or a complete diet conjured today, but can be missing if you just think it means I eat hamburger all the time.
Right, yeah. Right. Yeah, that's meat, right? That's carnivore. Carnivore, meat, hamburger.
It's got everything I need.
Yeah, ground beef. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, so fiber. Just a quick note on sources of fiber. Again, like I said, this is not like Metamucil. Although I suppose in an emergency situation, that's better than nothing. But what your body really wants is like avocados, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, whatever, apples. Yes, cabbage, kale. These were in order of most fiber to least fiber.
Per gram.
Yep. And all the other leafy greens, etc.
And, the accompanying thing here is that these are not only fiber, right? Like when you eat kale, you get chlorophyll, you get folate, you get a bunch of other vitamins and minerals, and those are complementary to what the fiber is doing. Mm-hmm. They're supportive to what the liver is doing, right? Its capacity to make bile and to do all of the processing and the breakdown and the elimination and the conjugation and all of that stuff that your liver does all the time. These things feed the whole process, not just a little piece of it.
Right. Yes, and exactly that is why I keep coming back to please not Metamucil, right? Because it's stripped down, it's isolated, just that fiber. And again, okay, that's better than nothing.
Right.
I don't want to completely demonize it. I just want to be clear that it is the fiber out of context and in its harshest form also. Yeah,
the psyllium products, they a lot of times the way these are set up is that the dose that they're going to actually provide to you is maybe 5, maybe 7 grams of fiber, primarily soluble fiber, a little bit of insoluble. And that's fine, but if you eat a whole avocado, you get 10 grams of fiber, right?
And go ahead.
If you eat a cup of blackberries, you get 8 grams of fiber. So that might be more appealing than the slurry of the fiber that you have to mix up and drink it as soon as possible before it forms up into a solid glob. Mm-hmm. Take what you like, but just recognize that one dose of 1 teaspoon scoop of psyllium husk fiber in a glass of water is not everything your body needs for the day, right? It's not from here on out, I can eat Twinkies and I'm all set as far as fiber intake. No, you need some at each of your meals.
Yeah, yeah. We're targeting between 30 and 40 grams of fiber a day. So if you love avocados, okay, then just 3 or 4 avocados a day and you're ready to go. But that would, I don't know, I guess that would get expensive after a while. Plus they're not always in the season and you can't always find a ripe one. So we're going to need some other sources. Also, another thing, speaking of expensive, to note is that if berries are a good source of fiber for you in terms of palatability, those are expensive too, but frozen berries have just as much fiber as fresh berries, and they're much less expensive. So definitely you can get the frozen berries. It is totally fine.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, fiber.
So, So to zoom back out again, right? The main thrust of what we're talking about here is that when people are doing cleanses or purges or extended fasts or that kind of thing, these are intense interventions. They can be hard on the body if you're not prepared for it nutritionally or constitutionally, right? And we find a lot of people in the modern population where this isn't really the best approach to help to resolve those feelings of heaviness and sluggishness and brain fog and distraction that they're carrying around every day. Those things that are making them seek out some change, right?
It might work in the moment, but it's not going to work long term, and it's not working for free, right? Like there's extra burden that's happening because this was the method, right? Whereas if you are actually addressing the problems and building these long-term habits, you are removing the problems that you were trying to solve instead of band-aiding them.
Right, yeah. And so this approach that we're describing takes a little longer to have palpable effects, but they're also more permanent because they develop out of shifts to your habit that now you can coast on, right? That's the key thing to keep in mind with this kind of intervention. It takes effort when you're getting started. It takes, setting up your kitchen and getting the ingredients and all of that to make it happen, or changing your bedtime routine or whatever else. But once you've done that, now it's pretty close to automatic, right? And so that makes it more sustainable than this kind of thing where you're like, well, I do that cleanse and I feel good for 3 days, and then I start to gradually feel worse and worse and worse until a month later I'm like, better do that cleanse again. Your body doesn't really love that kind of approach to healing or to development. Yeah. So instead of only operating at the end of the line, we try to work at the beginning and in the middle and all through the entire set of complementary processes that are working to achieve this goal inside your body. And we're working with different types of habits around food and movement and sleep and the way we respond and cope with stress. And the herbs are there with us at every one of those points along the way. Yeah.
All right, so this was the super simple version. And as you were listening, you might have been like, oh, I'm waiting for them to talk about this. And then you might have been like, wait, why didn't you say that? Well, because we did make a nearly 3-hour podcast episode a while back, but that was so long and we were trying not to do that again. So all of the extended version, all the explanation, the specific herbs to work with, specific strategies looking at okay, but what should I eat? What shouldn't I? All these different things. They're all in the Elements of Detoxification course, which I admit around here we do just call the detox course. Because yes, your body is doing detox functions, but it is not in a detox moment. It is all of the time. So learn how to support your all the time detox with the Elements of Detoxification course, which you can find at online.commonwealthherbs.com.
That's right. And like all of our courses, that's going to include self-paced video material that you can work through on your own schedule and from wherever you access the internet. You get access to twice weekly Q&A sessions live with us. You get lifetime access to the material, and when we add more material or update the material, that automatically appears right there in your course player.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything. You get the new bonus material for free for life. Yes.
Every lesson in the course has a little discussion button, and if you're watching a video, you have a question, you just pop that open, type it in, and you get an answer within a day from us and our faculty over here. You also can join into the student community, which is really active, and people are sharing their recipes and their successes and their garden pictures. All kinds of cool stuff in there.
And we're in there all the time too, so you can talk to us that way. You can talk to us in the live Q&A. You can talk to us through the discussion threads. The point here is you're not alone while you learn this. You have direct support from us in any format that works best for you.
Yeah. So again, that's online.commonwealthherbs.com, and there are links in the show notes for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's it for this episode. We'll be back soon with some more Holistic Herbalism podcasts for you. In the meantime, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, drink some tea, and heed the don't talks when you think of a detox. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.